Greetings, Earthlings! You are listening to Horror Nerds at Church, a ridiculously queer podcast where we take a deep dive into a horror film and talk about how it connects to queerness, religion, and theology. I'm Pastor Emily, and no thank you, no thank you.
And I am Pace Warfield, and I am all of the memes of somehow Palpatine has returned, along with all of the eye rolls. You can follow us on Patreon. Highly recommend this. Patreon.com/horrornerdsatchurch. It's only $5 to sign up. But if you sign up this month, you're going to get everything that was supposed to release last month but didn't, which is the Rogue One movie. Well, that was supposed to release 2 months ago. Rogue One Solo. And then you're also supposed to get Obi-Wan, which was supposed to release last month. Maybe you're going to get our Andor. Probably not, though, but that's supposed to theoretically release in June. And then, what else? Spaceballs movie commentary, which we'll probably record sometime soon and get that up. That's a pretty fast turnaround to do movie commentaries. And at some point, probably towards the end of the month, you will also get, for horror buffs exclusively, you will get a special episode on Close Encounters of the Third Kind with Kay and Rory Roloff. So lots of cool things you can do there. You can also check out our show notes for content warnings for this episode. There might be a few. There's so much comp-hetting in here that who knows.
So bad.
So
bad.
How have you been? What are you up to? Reading anything? All the questions.
We have a pupper now.
It's true.
She was born on Pi Day.
Perfect.
And
I didn't even know that fact.
Yeah. We didn't know until we were getting the vet records and stuff. She's adorable and wonderful, and I love her. And you might be able to, at some point during this recording, hear some squeaks and maybe a bark or two in the background. That is Athena. We love her.
I love her already too.
Yeah,
she's
adorable.
You may hear thunder in the background here because it's supposedly a really bad thunderstorm. And also, if it does thunder, you may hear some howls from Yoshi. So we'll see how that goes. Gandalf will sleep through thunder. He doesn't care, but Yoshi doesn't like it.
Yeah. We do not know. All we know is 2.5-hour car rides are too much.
That's legit. Especially for a little baby. A little baby. We got Gandalf around the same age as you got Athena. Makes me happy.
She's so cute, though.
Truth. So I am reading a lot. But one of the things I want to shout out, especially because it's going to come out in, especially since I'm going to tie into this book in the deep dive for this movie, is The Future is Disabled by Leah Lakshmi Piepzna Samareshna. I believe I am.
I have care work that
name.
is actually somebody else's that I need to return, but bye.
Yeah. I'm not sure if they use she, her pronouns. I think they may use they, them, but I'm not 100% sure.
Let me pull out the book. Well, this might be too old, but this one definitely has.
The Future is Disabled, which came out like 2 years ago, I want to say. They are talking about being trans and transitioning and stuff like that, and starting that realization in the past few years. So I assume it's a recent development.
Okay, so I have their book, which I actually have to return to somebody eventually, called Care Work, Dreaming Disability Justice.
Yeah. So this is my first time reading their work. I absolutely love it. But and they have this beautiful chapter on grief and stuff too, but one of the things I really have found enlightening in this is their discussion on ancestors and also becoming an elder and one day eventually becoming an ancestor too, and tying that into the future, like this disabled futurism. Really cool. So that's the one book I want to shout out. I'm reading. I also am finally watching some horror. I know it's been a while for all of you. Horror. Let me say that again. Horror. I am not calling sex workers an inappropriate name, I promise. But I'm watching Saw 10, and I'm about 3/4 of the way through it. I've just been kind of slowly watching it because I watch it before bed. I know it's weird to watch horror movies before bed, but that's very on brand for Pace. As if you're a long-time listener, you probably know. So I'm not like taking breaks because it's not interesting. It's just because I start to get tired and then I turn it off and stuff. But so far, I'm liking it for a Saw movie. I mean, it's a Saw movie, so it's not going to be like amazing cinema. It's not going to be like a Jordan Peele movie, but for what it is, it's fun. It's pretty good. So that's what I've been up to.
I am still working my way through the Linder Chronicles series. Still on Scarlet. Everything paused a little bit about 48 hours ago. I don't know why.
Can't imagine.
Yeah. But I am super excited because for Nerds at Church, we have two different guest episodes coming up by people. One is with Lamia H., who wrote Hijab Butch Blues, which I'm so excited about.
Right.
And so I just rechecked out the book, the like ebook this time from the library, so I can skim back through it because I read the audiobook last year. But then also just got the book Call to Allyship: Preparing Your Congregation for Leaders of Color, which is edited by Reverend Angela T. Kabeb, who is fantastic and amazing. And there's a bunch of people who wrote different things for the book. So I'm super excited to read that book. I haven't started it yet. It just came in the mail today.
Is she the other guest you're talking about?
Synod Assembly. Well, we're not sure who's going to be a guest, but we're going to have some number of authors.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it'll be really like cool.
What we did on this podcast for when we did both Attack from the 80s and Remain to be Told, when it was just kind of a surprise which authors showed up, which I was honestly cool with because both are fantastic anthologies. Please check those out if you haven't yet. Emily's read one of them, at least.
Yeah, and I loved it. It was fantastic. I don't know that I would like long horror books because I get so immersed in books that it can be hard for me. But having a bunch of short stories, I could just read one and then it was done. And that worked really well as a way of reading for me. So I could get really deep into it and also conclude it.
There's I'm not going to talk about the Attack from the 80s, but I think you'd really like that book as well. There's some really good stories in there. One by Lee Murray, who you know, and one by Ben Monroe, who you know. So,
nice.
And there's also this anti-Nancy Reagan story, which I am obsessed with in that book. So definitely fun to read. But right now we are going to cover the last Star Wars film of the Skywalker saga. Thank God. 9 of these fucking things. Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, directed by J.J. Abrams, came out in 2019, so the year before COVID swept around the world. And how things have changed. It's like 2 different worlds when this movie came out to the world we live in now. But 2019 was a pretty big year in film. We had a lot of superhero movies, like always. Avengers Endgame, Lion King, the live-action remake, Aladdin, the live-action remake, Frozen 2.
I didn't know there was an Aladdin live-action.
Yeah, it's actually pretty good. It has Will Smith in it as the genie.
Oh, no, maybe I did. I think I saw that then.
Yeah.
But I don't
pretty good.
I don't know if I've seen the Lion King live-action. It looks
That one has
terrifying.
Beyonce in it. It is kind of terrifying. Toy Story 4 came out. Captain Marvel came out. One of the best
Frozen
Marvel
2.
movies. Fight me. Oh, did I
said
not say Frozen 2?
But I was saying something else at the same time, I think.
Yeah,
So.
Frozen 2.
Which is fantastic. I really liked it.
Spider-Man Far From Home, which is probably the best Spider-Man movie that is not into the Spider-Verse franchise.
Good qualifications there.
Yep. Shazam, which is fine. Another superhero movie. You like Black Adam, the sequel to that. I didn't like Black Adam. Pokemon Detective Pikachu, very cute, fun movie. John Wick 3. Rocket Man, the Elton John biopic. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Dora and the Lost City of Gold. Downton Abbey. Nancy Drew, The Mysterious Staircase. Arctic Dogs. Let It Snow, a movie I know Emily enjoys. Klaus, another movie I know Emily enjoys. Cats. I should have put Cats in the horror section, but it's here. Greta Gerwig's Little Women, which is one of the best versions of that story. And then also 1917. So, pretty big year in cinema. But
I've only seen like 8 of those.
Oh, wow. I was expecting
I
to see
started
a lot
out
more.
strong, and then I hit a bunch where I didn't.
Like Arctic Dogs, I thought you probably would have seen, because that feels like a very Susanna and your household movie.
Yeah, but I don't think I haven't seen it, and I didn't live in the house when it came out.
That's true.
I lived in Iowa, and started my CPE residency in September.
That's right. That's
of this year, so that's probably part of it.
Nancy Drew Mysterious Staircase is pretty good. Arctic Let Us Know and Klaus. We've talked about both of those on this podcast before.
So good.
Have you seen Dora and the Lost City of Gold? Because that seems up your alley. Because it is about.
Is it
Dora
actually Dora the Explorer?
Yes, a live action version of Dora.
Oh,
and,
I heard about it.
And Spanish language, and also a kids movie. I just thought you'd be all over that. But in the horror
now
world,
I am.
Yeah, well, see, you'll have to watch it.
Now I want to see it.
In the horror world, though, we've had Midsommar has come out, which we covered on season 1. That's the pre-Emily movie from the podcast history. So I don't think you've seen that one. It's really good, though. We talk about it a lot also in our Wicker Man episode, because they're kind of very similar.
I was going to say, there was a moment where I was like, No, Wicker Man is what I'm thinking of. But I remember the references. Yeah.
Yeah. Prey, which we have a movie commentary on this season.
So
that came out last month. And that one actually came out on time, so yay. That one you can listen to right now if you're a Patreon supporter. Sign up and listen to it right now. The Addams Family computer animated film came out. We covered the first and second live action in seasons 2 and 4, respectively, both with Elle Dowd. Dr. Sleep came out, which is the sequel to The Shining, and we cover The Shining in season 4, and we talk a little bit about Dr. Sleep in that. And there's also a movie commentary on The Shining on Patreon. Escape Room came out. Glass by M. Night Shyamalan came out, and we covered one of his most famous movies, The Sixth Sense, on season 5.
Yeah, we did.
Happy Death Day to You came out. Us by Jordan Peele, his second horror movie after Get Out and before Nope. We covered Nope so far. Pet Sematary, the remake, came out. It's fine, I guess. Hellboy came out. Godzilla King of the Monsters came out, and I really am pushing hard for a Godzilla season. We'll see. Emily's kind of on board, maybe.
Yeah, I'm on board with it. I know many people who are like, would be really excited about it, so.
Yeah. Ma came out. That's a great movie. Child's Play, with the remake, came out with Mark Hamill as the voice actor for Chucky in that.
Ooh.
Only in the remake version. But yeah, we'll do a Chucky season one of these days. I feel like Emily is probably ready to start Child's Play franchise. Like, as far as horror goes, I think your horror chops are there now.
Ooh, wow.
Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, based off the amazing haunting book series that traumatized many of us 90s and 80s kids as children. Ready or Not came out. It Chapter 2, based off of Stephen King's book, of course, In the Tall Grass. Terminator Dark Fate, and Black Christmas. So about 1 million horror movies.
I think I've seen Black Christmas.
There are like 3 different ones, so it depends on which one you've seen.
Oh.
There's one that was made in the 70s, one that was made in the 2000s, and then one that was made in 2019.
I just saw it last year, I think. So, probably the newest one? I don't know.
Maybe, yeah. Well, when was the first time you have seen this film, Star Wars Episode 9? Did you see it in 2019 in theaters at home?
My first experience of this was in theaters, and I remember it vividly. We went around Christmas time, and the same person whose book I have that I need to return was at the time my roommate, one of my housemates, in our homo house. And we went and we dressed up as characters. So I dressed up as Chewie because I have this fuzzy hooded, like, very warm camping thing that I received when I was leaving Minnesota. And then underneath, they had got me a t-shirt that is a Christmas shirt, and it has Chewie with like a string of Christmas lights on him, and then it says "fa la 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 larg."
I believe. So I was gonna say, I believe you can actually see on Patreon one of our book episodes. You were wearing that shirt, and so we released the videos of many of the book episodes on Patreon, so you can see it for yourself if you're a Patreon supporter. It's
true. I do remember. Intentionally, my shirt choices were very intentional when we were recording video. So I wore that underneath. But then I also like drew a Yoda on the other person's mask. It was pre-COVID, like we realized COVID was probably already around the world and back. And they just had a cough, so they just wanted like people to know, I have a cough. I'm not contagious. I am containing it. So we had a mask, and then I drew Yoda on their mask, and it was delightful. And in the theater, when Rey and Ben kiss, both of us were like, what? That's awful. Like, our gut reaction was loud, and people were confused because it was Iowa. It was great. So that was my first experience. What about you?
I first saw this in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, with my ex Matt and with my other ex Todd and his husband. And so we all watched the movie. I knew going in that was going to be a mess just because of what I've been reading online and stuff, but I was even still like afterwards thought it was a mess. And I remember not sure how Todd would feel on it, because I know he wasn't like a super fan of Star Wars 8 the way I was, but he was like, yeah, this movie made no sense. So that was my story of seeing it. And I have to say, I've only watched this movie 3 times.
I don't know how many times I've actually seen it. I'm going to watch it at least one more time, but...
Yeah, the second and third time I watched it was both for this podcast. So I had not seen it since 2019 until this podcast.
Yeah, I don't know that I saw it again after that, unless I was watching it with somebody. I might have watched it with River. I will be watching it again because most of my house has not watched it. And Brooke, after such a great conversation last time, wants to watch it. So we're going to have to figure out when we're going to do it. But it is a movie that a pupper can sleep through. So,
well, I have a little bit of behind the scenes for this movie. And by a little bit, I mean kind of a lot of it. So when it was announced that they're doing the sequel trilogy, the 3 directors were named right off the bat. J.J. Abrams was the first, Rian Johnson was the second, and Colin Trevorrow was the third. Colin Trevorrow was becoming a big name because of his Jurassic World, which has now since become a trilogy. And so people were really excited for him to direct. And he was hired to write and direct the film. But he apparently had irreconcilable differences, creative differences with Lucasfilm. And that's the PC way to say it. And the not PC way is apparently he was an asshole to work with. So Kathleen Kennedy, the head of Lucasfilm, fired him. Go Kathleen.
right.
But his version was kind of interesting. It was going to be called Duel of the Fates, and apparently it would have heavily involved the planet Mortis, which, if you remember from Clone Wars, is where the Force
Sisters,
Trinity
right?
lives. No, the Force Trinity lives there.
Yeah.
Dathomir's Night Sisters. So, presumably it would have involved the Mortis Trinity at some point, but Kathleen Kennedy was just not satisfied with his scripts he was turning in, and also with him as a person, because apparently he's a jerk. So,
you know,
all that led to him being fired. They hired J.J. Abrams, who directed the first one, to come back and direct the third. There was some rumors that Rian Johnson might have been asked to direct it, but he claims that he never was asked. He's the one who directed 8. But what we do know
I
is...
wish he had been asked.
Yeah, he was involved in some of the planning for it. But I want to be fair... Okay, I have a lot of mixed feelings about this movie, and we'll talk about a lot of them. But in absolute 100% fairness to them, it was kind of an impossible task they were handed from the beginning. One of the main characters, Carrie Fisher, had died before this movie started filming, before they even had their very first day of filming. She passed away. The second one had a very small but vocal group of incels who hated it and review bombed it. And then also this is supposed to be the final film of a trilogy of trilogies, and so there's like a lot of pressure on there. So I mean, to be fair to them, it was kind of an impossible task from the get-go. And also it was just there was a lot of things that kind of are not great about it. But the original script did have Leia in a huge role, at least according to her brother Tom. So this hasn't been anything official Lucasfilm says, so we can take this all with a grain of salt. But
why wouldn't they agree with that? Like, what harm does it do to agree with that?
Well, because it would be releasing like what the story could have been, and then that could undermine the film that they made.
Yeah, but now they're still holding that.
But according to Tom, she was going to be the last Jedi and team up with Rey for an epic showdown kind of thing. And he said that there's a big payoff to her character arc. So we're not sure how much of that is totally true, but it's very clear, though, that Leia was going to have at least a large role in the film. I'm not sure what that role would have been if she was going to team up with Rey or not. But her death rendered all of that impossible. So rather than recast
I remember
her...
when she died. Oof.
Yeah. But rather than recast her, they definitely don't want to do that. They didn't want to just kind of like kill her off screen or something like that. So they decided to use outtakes from the shooting of the first 2 films of the sequel trilogy, which is why Rey is dressed exactly the same way she's dressed in the first film, and it magically takes place on a jungle planet, just like the first Force Awakens takes place, so that way they could reuse a lot of those shots of Leia.
Which, like, honestly, I don't mind.
I do,
Like,
because
there are other things that I mind about it, but, like, I don't mind them trying to actually use Carrie
yeah,
Fisher's acting.
yeah, I
You
don't
know?
mind that, and I'm glad they didn't replace her or anything like that. The problem is it just doesn't work because we get a lot of
Yeah.
like her just saying one random line and then they have to try to like shoehorn a way for her to say that into the script, and it doesn't always work well. So it's just
Yeah.
this really jaunty dialogue sometimes. You're like, what? Like, what is she
Yep.
talking about? What are they talking about? And so I just didn't think it worked well. But
Yeah.
still, I'm glad, but I'm 100% glad they didn't recast her and tried to use her actual acting. There's, of course, like body doubles from behind, and there's a voiceover and stuff that was not her done for some of the scenes, but by and large, anytime you see her head on, it is actual footage of Carrie Fisher.
But every time she's decapitated, then you know it's just the AI.
Yeah, or showing her from behind. Yep. David Fincher was asked to direct after they fired Colin Trevorrow. He's the director of Alien 3, so I would have loved to see what that film could have been, but he turned it down. Rian Johnson and Kathleen Kennedy did have meetings, and they did have story ideas that were passed on to J.J. Abrams, and some of their narrative beats were used. Like, Kylo was always going to turn to the good side at the end of the film. I don't think the kiss was going to be there or anything, but like that was clearly, that's also kind of something we kind of saw set up from the beginning. So like those are some of the story beats that were kept.
Wait, the kiss was set up from the beginning? I don't think that's true.
No,
Or are
I
you
didn't say
saying
the kiss. I'm saying him turning good.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Just
set up from
checking.
the beginning. Yeah,
Gotta
no, the
check on these
kiss.
things
We'll get
sometimes.
there. But because of this movie being controversial and also the last movie being controversial, I feel like Lucasfilm was just kind of burned from it, so they were very secretive about the production of the film. But fans highly speculate that significant changes were made because of the very small but very vocal incel pushback to Last Jedi, such as the Reylo kiss that we were just talking about, making Poe have a woman love interest, not delivering on the Finn Poe storyline, reducing Rose's role to basically a fucking desk role where she has like 10 seconds of screen time.
Rose is hardly in it at all.
Yeah, and so all that's just gross, and it's really sad about Rose, especially because the actor was just eviscerated totally like unfairly, racist, fat-phobic, sexist, just total eviscerating of her and character assassination attempt on Twitter. And Lucasfilm did not really do a good job of standing up for a lot of the other casts that did, though, like Mark Hamill,
Good.
and like pretty much the entire cast was standing up for her and saying how awful it was, and Rian Johnson and all of them. But anyway, that seems to be one of the reasons why.
Oh, everybody else is sticking up for her, so we don't have to. Then we don't have to.
And we will give in by not having her in the film, the third film, except for like 10 seconds, in two or three scenes, right?
Yeah. Yeah, she deserves better. Wait.
From what I've been able to gather, and this is based on a lot of what fans have gathered and what has been released and stuff, it does seem that Leia's arc would have still ended in her death had Carrie Fisher not died, and it still would have been that kind of sacrificing herself to redeem her son. Still gross, and it still kind of happened anyway, but it would have had a lot more screen time and a lot more of like a character arc in this film than we get, which is really sad, and so it's just messy. Then, because Emily and I are kind of on Doctor Who hyperfixations right now, I want to point out some of the Doctor Who connections that are in this. So Tice, who's the ex-stormtrooper that teams up with Finn, she was played by Vinette Robinson, who played Rosa Parks in the 13th Doctor's episode Rosa. Admiral Pride, or whatever he is. Admiral Pride was played by Richard E. Grant, who played the Intelligence in the 11th Doctor episode, and also is the, not sure if it's canonical, but probably not, Shalka Doctor animated film. And then also in the non-canonical 10th Doctor parody called The Curse of the Fatal Death. And then Matt Smith, who played the 11th Doctor, was actually in talks to play a character in this movie, but the character ended up not being used. He wasn't even filmed for it. Yeah, but many people suspect, from what he said and what some of the sounds like the initial draft of the script had, is he was going to play a young Palpatine in flashbacks, like showing how Palpatine survived and stuff like that. And then also,
that
just because the Lord of the Rings,
way better than the actual thing with Palpatine.
Yeah, agreed. And then also, just because I love him as an actor, and I know Emily loves Lord of the Rings, Dominic Monaghan from Lord of the Rings was in this as one of the rebel resistance people.
I kept seeing him, and I kept being like, I feel like this is a Hobbit. I feel like this is a Hobbit.
Yep.
I was right.
Yep. Mariah Doc, Brandy Buck. So, do you have a one-sentence summary for this film?
You know I do.
I
had to scroll down to find it. Chosen family is better.
Mine is Rise of Space, in keeping with
your space.
My tradition for this one. Mine's shorter. Take a drink, don't take a drink. I don't know.
Yours is always shorter. Pace of her.
So, as we roll through this film, somehow, the opening crawl tells us, Palpatine has returned. What?
Yeah, that's. I mean, like, technically, we know that he's been messing around with, like, possibilities of, like, immortality for, forever. That's what he uses to entice Anakin to the dark side. But really, he just, like, disappears for a good, I don't know how many it was, 30,
like 20
40
years.
20. There's no way they're less than 20 years old. Kylo, you think?
Let's find out. 34 years after the Battle of Yavin. 34 years. So you're right. 34 years later.
Yeah. But how old is Kylo supposed to be? How old is Ben?
Probably mid-20s, late 20s.
Somewhere around there. Okay. I just want to make sure, because, like, I get the, like...
Adam Driver was in his 30s when he made it, but I think he's supposed to be playing younger. Like 28, 29, somewhere around that.
Yeah, it seemed like he was playing younger, but also there's only so much younger you can go.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
Yeah. Any hoozle. Yeah. Also, Kylo wants to kill Palpatine because Palpatine is a threat. Because now Kylo Ren is Supreme Leader, which it's like there's just so much bullshit there. How are we really? Yeah. Yep. Also, that's a lot of Star Destroyer resurrections.
Yeah, they were apparently Exegol had been a Sith planet for many years and had underground construction facilities where those were made in secret during the Empire. And also, in the 34 years since the fall of the Empire, they've been working on continuously. One of many things, I'll talk about the book at the end, but the book has made this movie so much better for me. Because this is Horror Nerds at Church, I always want to try to shout out horror. This film opens like a horror movie with strobe lights against Palpatine's pale face, so it's like that very visual, like flashing lights and stuff. Kylo's mask with the red threads in it, all that kind of stuff.
Which is very I liked his helmet with the red threads. Like it feels very much like I think it's a Japanese art technique where broken pots are recombined with gold paint. It's like the dark side equivalent of that. I was gonna look up what it was, and then let's see what that comes up with. Kintsugi. Beauty and the Broken. Kintsugi. It's like kintsugi, but with evil red instead of gold or something.
Yeah. I love the hyperspace skip that Poe Dameron does. That first appears in the Poe Dameron novel, which explains his relationship with Zori and him being a spice runner. So a pretty good book. So you can read that one, but it explains where he learned how to do hyperspace skip. And so I really love the use of the Millennium Falcon in this film. I mean, it's my favorite ship. So that's going to be one of the characters I trace. I couldn't think of my third character. It's going to be the Millennium Falcon.
Ooh,
anyway.
that's a good choice. That's a good choice.
Heard it here first, folks. But I love how in Force Awakens, how they're able to hyperspace and then exit hyperspace under a planet's atmosphere to escape the planetary shields. Like, that's really cool. And then this one, they're doing hyperspace skipping, just really cool.
Yeah, I thought I was like, I don't think this has happened before. And I don't think it has, right?
Correct. Only in the book.
Yeah.
And the book came out first, but it was directly tied into this movie, so it's part of it was the prequel to this movie. So.
Gotcha. Nice. Yeah. Also, Poe and Rey, when they get back with the Millennium Falcon, sound like an old married couple. Which, like, kind of tracks, except that it's been, 6 months? How long has it been that they've been doing this?
It's about...
Resistance thing for?
It's been about 9 months since the last movie took place, and about 2 years since the first movie took place.
Yeah, so, like, I love that they already have the, like, witty, we love each other, but also, you did what to my what? It's fantastic. I'm a fan.
I do think, though, that, like, this movie really ups the humor and the one-liners to a point where it starts to take me out. Like, it's okay when it's a little bit, but, like, this is just, like, every scene has, like, 3 or 4, like, quippy one-liners, and I'm just like, people don't really talk like that. And, like, it's clear that they're trying to really make a sanitized movie for the moviegoers, with a lot of, like, stuff to laugh about and not make you think hard after the last one. So
it's definitely a laughy one. I tried to view it as campy, particularly in the Poe, Rey, Finn realm. Like, if I can just reframe it for myself as campy, then it doesn't feel as bad.
And I mean, Star Wars has always been campy, let's be real. But still.
Exactly. Also, they're just such a cute polycule, those three.
They really are. Cute little... I think it's a triad. I don't think it's a V. By this movie, I'm pretty sure it's a triad.
Yeah, it's definitely not a V. They might not all be sexual relationships, right? But it's definitely a triad.
Yeah.
With, like, a couple, offshoots.
Yeah. The thing that, and we already talked about this, but the thing that probably annoyed me more than anything else in this movie is Rose getting fucking desk duty after, like, the heroism and awesomeness of her character arc in the last movie, and then just to give her, like, 10 seconds of screen time.
Yeah. I was not at all happy about that. It was bullshit. And it's just like, why? Why? Mm-hmm. There's no reason for that. There's no indicator for that. Do better.
There is a good novel that features Rey prominently that is a lead up to this movie. So if you want more, not Rey, sorry, that uses Rose prominently. So if you want more Rose than this film gives us, check out Justina Ireland's Spark of the Rebellion. It follows Rey and Rey, Rose, and Poe on a mission, and a lot of it is devoted to Rose, a lot of it's devoted to Rey, a little bit's devoted to Poe, but not much. Which, fair.
Interesting. Yeah. Also, of course, Rey can heal. And she's decided, like, it's a decidedly good thing, but we also talk about, like, healing and keeping alive as a dark power.
But I feel like...
I don't know. Can anybody else... Has anybody else healed?
Yeah. It's been a long... They talked about it in Phantom Menace and stuff. Like, they have Jedi healers at the temple and stuff like that. It's always been a light side of the Force power. And so my interpretation was always keeping someone alive beyond their intended life is a dark side of the power. Whereas healing someone isn't. But using dark side energy to keep you alive when you should otherwise pass away is the issue.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And healing, I think part of it too is healing is for others, whereas the dark side aspect of that is using the Force to keep yourself alive, whereas healing is using the Force to help somebody else stay alive. Is my guess.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Also, it's so good. Well done, Rey. The jump slash thing against Kylo's ship. I was a fan of that. Yeah. I know it's like Matrixy and stuff, but it was just so cool.
Cool. And it was one of the scenes they showed in the trailers for it, so by the time of the movie I'd seen it like a million times, which made it a little less cool watching it, but it is still a very cool scene. That's the downside of whenever you use some of the best scenes in the trailer, then it's like by the time you see the movie it's like, well, you've seen this a million times.
And it's like, yeah, and that's where the like sometimes when you watch a trailer then it's like, well, now I've seen the movie, great. Done.
I feel like honestly this whole movie felt like a trailer. It's so choppy, just like one scene to the next with little space in between. An extended music video.
You're not wrong. Also, Rey uses lightning, which is supposed to be a dark side only power.
Yeah. Well, it is dark side. That because Chewie's in there, and so she accidentally pulls on the dark side to prevent Chewie from going away, but instead uses it turns out as Force lightning and destroys the ship, which makes her think for a good part of the film that she killed Chewie. So that's one of the reasons why she leaves the Resistance to go to Luke's old planet, because she pulled on the dark side and couldn't forgive herself for that and for almost killing Chewie.
Which, like, you know, good job, Jedi. Train everybody to, like, just ditch once they mess up because they can't, you know, figure out how to repair harm or anything.
Yep.
Run away.
At least Luke legit says, I was wrong in this movie. It's like, thank God you finally said it.
I appreciated that. Like, I was wrong. I did this out of fear. It was wrong. Yeah. Also, the adorableness of their, like, team cheer of, like, for Chewie.
Yep.
Yeah.
Another movie that took me out and was so ridiculously campy, and it was such a blatant fan servicey line, is when C-3PO looks at it and looks around and says, I need just looking at my friends one last time. And like that was also in the trailer, and it's like, we get it, it's the last Star Wars movie, we don't need to have this really weird dialogue saying, I'm just looking at all my friends one last time, especially because he gets most of his memory back anyway, so like it's not like even a lasting sentimental moment, because they just kind of retcon it by the end anyway when he gets his memory back from R2 with some gaps, but still.
There was so much about that like it feels like some of it didn't. Not all of C-3PO's lines felt like C-3PO. And that's kind of one of them. But also the, like, offhanded comment of, like, R2's storage drives are faulty or whatever. And it's like, it just was like, it was shoehorning it in. It felt like, because he's like, oh no, whatever. And then it's like, okay, but, like, R2's units aren't faulty. He's just, you know, a droid with Force sensitivity. And eccentric. And also, like, you're worried about it, and yet you know that there is a backup. Really?
Yep.
Also, of course, they see through Hux's lie. That was like the most obvious thing ever. Why did he not just go with them?
Right.
It was so obvious. Even his bandage was like the worst.
Then pride just kills
so
him.
fake.
It's like, yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, and I love the Rolly droid D.O. No, thank you.
Yeah.
No, thank you. It's just so cute.
Even if he is
like,
a Sith droid.
I mean, he didn't know that. Also, what's the Battle of Anslet Island?
I don't know.
Where there was a stormtrooper mutiny?
Yeah. All I know is from the line in the movie, which is
okay.
as much as
I wasn't
think
sure if
there
it
is.
was something that I missed or not.
It doesn't even get anything else in the book, so.
Weird. Here's my question for you, Pace. Rey in a skimmer on that water. Force knowledge? Hubris? Something else?
As in her being able to do it, or her choosing to do it, or
her choosing to do it. The whole thing.
I think there's some hubris in there.
Whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some hubris in there. And also clearly very talented in the Force and one of the best pilots in the Resistance. So it makes sense that she'd be capable, but still I don't know why she went off and did it on her own.
Yeah.
I feel like another thing that annoys me is a lot of the characters have unlearned the lessons that they had learned the last one, where the last one was like, we can't do it on our own. We're not going to be heroes. We have to band together, and it's not worth risking our lives. And then this one, they're all doing the exact same thing they fucked up in the last one, which, I mean, true, a little bit of human nature, but at the same time, it's also like, really, you just learned this. You're resetting everybody.
Yeah. Which feels like it happens a lot in movie franchises like this.
Yeah. It's true.
Over and over and over again. Like, just because you've grown once doesn't mean you have to just do that same growing every time. Right. You could grow in a new way.
In a different, exactly. Grow in a different way. That's actually would be helpful to show on film.
Yeah. Also, when Rey and Kylo were locked in the lightsaber fight on the remains of the Death Star or whatever, and they were like really close, I just wanted her to like bop him in the nose. Not like actual like full-blown punch, just like a bop that would like startle him to pieces. It would have been hilarious. I'm just saying. Yeah.
I do love Rey's lightsaber technique where she does the backhanded wield, which is what Ahsoka does as well. I think it's pretty cool that that's her lightsaber style. Another thing is like, didn't we, again, not learning the lesson from the last time, didn't we learn that keeping secrets is not a good idea? Like, didn't Luke learn that about Darth Vader, and Leia learned that about Darth Vader, and now they're keeping a secret from Rey that she's a Palpatine? No one bothered to tell her? What the fuck, y'all? That's the whole reason she gets tempted, is because no one told her this, and she's learning about it for the first time and thinks it's a reflection of her character. If you had just told her, we know this is who you come from, but we love you anyway, it's not, you can't help it, from the get-go, she wouldn't have had that whole temptation and leaving and all that bullshit.
It's almost like what they did to Luke. And Leia, in fact. And in some ways, even worse for Leia.
Yep.
Yeah. Also, the whole thing is just such bullshit.
Yeah. That
Palpatine is not... Ugh.
Yeah, the whole return of Palpatine and the whole making Rey his granddaughter is just not good. That's not the direction they should have went. But now it's canon, so oh well. What do we do with it now? But,
puke on it. Puke on it. We puke on it. Because it's bullshit. They said in the second one, and I get how you could, like, retcon it to, like, fit whatever, but, like, in the second one, it was established that she didn't have a family. She wasn't some special person, and that is a huge part of what made her so cool and made the stories
Agreed.
so cool.
Yep.
Not cool.
Right.
You know what is cool, though? The ground invasion on a Star Destroyer with the not horses.
Right.
I have no idea,
cool.
you know, how they're managing to breathe, but
I mean,
so
they're in the
cool.
atmosphere, but still pretty high up, so it'd be... But in the atmosphere, at least.
Yeah, we did a first Ascension Day episode on that for Nerds at Church, our first season, on, like, what happens to your body as you ascend through the atmosphere. Also, it's not Earth, so, like, who knows what kind of an atmosphere it is.
Maybe it has a very different atmosphere.
Right? Weird. Yeah. I did love that Palpatine's Force Lightning, again, was rebounded on himself because of lightsabers. Like, he should know that by now. Lightsabers can handle your Force Lightning. That's how you got so ugly in the first place.
True. I love now that there is a maneuver called the One more time. It feels like a tongue twister, but it's not. The Hodo maneuver, which is named after her ramming her ship through the Star Destroyer, and how the Hobbit, I can't remember his name in the movie, I'll just call him the Hobbit, Mary says, we should all do Hodo maneuvers, and Poe's like, yeah, no. But still, cool.
Yeah. Also, the kiss is bullshit, as I mentioned in the,
Agreed.
like, first experience. It's bullshit. It's unnecessary. It doesn't make sense, given their context. Like, they don't have that kind of a relationship.
Yep. Just wait, though. I can't wait to talk about the book.
Also, Ben and Leia return to the Force together. There's something kind of cool about that.
Lovely.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
And Ewoks! They threw that in there literally just for me. And people
and
liked
that,
it.
Yeah, and that was Wicket. That was actually supposed to be Wicket, and it was played by Warwick Davis, who played Wicket in Return of the Jedi and in the 2 Ewok movies, so kind of a cool cameo. Nice. He came back for that. I love that Chewie finally gets his fucking medal after, 6 movies?
Yeah.
I mean, he was robbed the medal in the first New Hope ceremony. I mean, Grant is hot on his medal, but still, come on.
I didn't catch it when they handed the medal, when Maz handed the medal to him. I did not make that connection, and then I was like, oh, yes, I'm very glad that Chewie got his medal. He deserves all the medals.
And the Triad family hug, going back to the Triad at the end of the movie, I really do like, as crappy as this movie is, there are some things I really do like in this. Chewie getting his medal is one, but this Triad family hug and ending the movie in that moment, aside from the little thing with Rey on Tatooine, but just like, that's just such a lovely way to kind of end the arc of the film. Yeah.
Also, I like the way that Rey took Luke and Leia's lightsabers and buried them, because they were returned to the Force, so there wasn't a thing to bury them. And Leia's home planet was destroyed many years ago. And so being able to, like, bury them together, because she made herself a lightsaber that is her own and that is wholly hers, which is just really cool. It did raise a question for me of, like, did Poe just, like, lose BB-8? Is Rey BB-8's new boo? What about R2 and 3PO and D-O? Like, what is going on with all of them?
If we've learned anything in the sequel trilogy, it is that Rey is a full-on droid magnet. Droids just love her and follow her everywhere. Yeah. Every droid she encounters just loves her. And she helps wake up R2-D2, D-O. Yep. So I don't know. I feel like Poe is still captaining the Millennium Falcon along with BB-8, and he took Rey there. Even though it's Rey's ship. That's my headcanon for how it ended.
Okay, because I was like...
Because, of course, the Triad family would journey together for an act of remembrance, you know.
Yeah, but why?
So Finn was there too.
But then nobody's there with her, right? Like,
True.
It would make sense to me that they would be together, but she is decidedly by herself, except for with that one old lady.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't even know who the old lady is.
It just was a weird thing. What?
I don't know who the old lady is either. Like, sometimes, like a lot of times in the prequel trilogy, every single character is somehow related to a character in the original trilogy. Whereas in this one, there's a lot of characters that just appear for the first time, and so I don't know if she's supposed to be someone we know or not. But
yeah, I don't know.
Cool. I do like Rey claiming the Skywalker name as her own, as the way of separating herself from Palpatine's legacy, and also, I still would have liked Rey being from no family and still claiming an identity herself more. So it's a bittersweet thing. I love it, but I also could have liked something else a little bit more.
Yeah.
So the first time I watched this movie, like I said, I thought it was a mess. I didn't like it. And there's this review by Will from Another Look podcast with Will and Corey, and it's on Letterboxd. I'll link it in the show notes. But his review like sums up a lot of what I think about this movie. So he says, and this is just an excerpt from his review. But he says, the whole thing is going to be an assault on the senses, bullet-paced, market-tested euphoria so loud and obnoxious that the only reason to slow down is for the piercing pain of tireless exposition. The characters are going to move from one MacGuffin to MacGuffin, plot point to plot point, with no breathing room, and therefore no criticism. The audience will cheer when they're supposed to cheer and cry when they're supposed to cry. Most of the movie won't make any sense at all. It's contributing to an endgame of meaningless moments, cheap fan service, and little to no development for the characters that have mostly remained intact. We're not just retconning, we're actively simplifying and destroying the last remnants left standing of this trilogy. And what I love about that in the larger context is he's talking about how comparing this to where The Last Jedi was headed, and like how this movie kind of pivoted from that and went in a completely different direction. But like,
that's, I mean, it's true. It's accurate. Like, there's, but
like,
they could have done so much more.
Agreed.
And better.
Agreed. But like, at the end of the day, this movie, like, it's fine. It's fine. I guess that's it. It's fine. It's not good. It's not great. It's just fine. And that's okay. You can have okay movies, but the thing that was just really hard for me for a long time was how good Last Jedi was, and then how much that kind of twisted it. So rewatching this and also reading the book, which I'm going to talk about a little bit, was kind of healing for me because it allowed me to watch it again and just enjoy it for what it is without trying to compare it to what came before. And in that sense, it's fine. So, but the book makes it so much better. The book is by Ray Carlson, and you can tell, like, she was handed the script and she's like, what the fuck? Because, like, she goes out of her way to kind of undo some of the things. Like, she still has to make it canon because it's the book, but like, she still goes out of her way to try to undermine it a little bit, and the book is so fucking good. So the book really, kind of like we talked about this in Revenge of the Sith, which is also another kind of mess of a movie. The book makes that movie better. The book, for me, reading the book really made this movie better, and so I really like the story now, and am much more at peace with this story than I was from just watching it. But like, it goes into great detail about Palpatine's return, and we're also getting this from Mandalorian and Ahsoka, which kind of are showing like the remnants of the Empire and how, and the cloning that they're trying to do and experiments they're trying to do in the Mandalorian show and stuff. It's kind of helping contextualize Palpatine's return. But really, when this came out, it was out of fucking nowhere. So I'm glad that Star Wars since then has been trying to contextualize, like, how did he actually come back? Because the book is not limited by the fact that Carrie Fisher passed away. The book gives so much more agency and characterization to Leia. Has a lot of flashbacks to her training with Luke throughout, and a lot of just scenes from her perspective and stuff. It still has the weird lines in it on occasion because like everything on screen has to be in the book, but like it at least contextualizes it and makes it better.
Yeah.
There's this line I love in there from Luke's conversation with Rey on Ahch-To. Rey asks, she's like, "I will never live up to Leia." And Luke said, "I won't be able to either. Leia is the only one who is truly unturnable. Leia was the only one who was never tempted by the dark side in the Skywalker family," is what Luke says, which I find fascinating.
It's fascinating, and it's like weird. I don't know that I... Yeah.
This is from Luke's perspective too, so to be clear.
Oh, wow.
And this is right after Leia died, so I think there's a little bit of aggrandizing of her. But still, it's like a lovely sentiment, I think. But also weird, agreed. We also learn about who Snoke was. Snoke was apparently a failed clone of Palpatine, so or it's strongly implied that's what happened. So that explains a lot of who Snoke was, and also why Palpatine speaks in Snoke's voice and says, "I was the voice you heard all along," to Kylo when Kylo first visits him. It's also implied that Rey's father was a failed clone of Palpatine, so Palpatine did not actually have sex with somebody, because that's a good thing, because I cannot imagine anybody consenting to sex with Palpatine, so like I don't know how Rey was parented otherwise, but it seems like Rey's father was a failed clone of Palpatine who escaped and tried to start a family and run away, and that's what happened. There's another cool scene where it talks about the Jedi and stuff like that, and Rey comes to this realization that anger isn't bad in and of itself, and fear isn't bad in and of itself either. They're not emotions that automatically lead to the dark side. They're just emotions that need to be held in check and in tension with other emotions. And I love that realization and how it helps undo some of that binary, gross, and light and dark stuff of the Force. This is honestly, though, my favorite part of the book is the kiss between Rey and Kylo. Because Ray Carlson, the author, says, like, as Rey's revived, she sees Kylo. She sees he has turned to the light side of the Force, and now he's Ben. And she is so relieved to see her friend. She kisses him. And it, like, clearly emphasizes friend. And I'm like, thank you.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Then it also explained, I just find this stuff interesting, and it doesn't necessarily make the book better, the movie better, but I just kind of love how it expands the lore. So it explains why no rebels showed up at the end of episode 8. It's because the Force Order had blocked the rebels' signal from reaching across the galaxy. And so the Millennium Falcon in this movie is able to go and jump between star systems to get past the First Order's blockade of transmissions, and is able to get so many people to help. So they were always there. They just weren't not able to get the first signal.
That makes so much more sense. I was confused. So thank you.
And I also feel like that's one of the things that was kept from episode 8. I feel like that was always going to be the intention. So I'm glad that was how they explained that. Dyad in the Force is something that Palpatine just mentions offhanded here. I'm going to talk about that back in the Force lore, because there's a lot more in the book about what a dyad in the Force is, because when Palpatine sees Rey and Kylo, or Ben at that point, he says, "You are a dyad in the Force. That's why you're so powerful." And then there's nothing else about it. And we're like, what? Yeah. So the book goes into that more. And then the last thing is the book makes it clear. The movie does not, but it kind of hints at it. When Finn says to Rey that he wants to tell her something, when this is all done, and he doesn't ever tell her what he wants to tell her, the book makes it clear that what he wanted to tell her is that he's Force sensitive too. It's not what I think a lot of people came away from the movie is like, is Finn wanting to say that he loves Rey? But no, that's not what it was about. It's about him being Force sensitive too. And that's how he's able to sense that Rey survived after the at the end of the movie, which I think is cool.
That feels a little bit like forcing it, but okay.
Yeah.
Better than forcing it with other characters. So, if you're gonna force sensitivity,
I guess we'll force a transition into our deep dive. That was actually kind of good. I'm proud of myself. But thanks
so
for the
good.
pun that helped.
Yeah, anytime. Oh my gosh, that's such a good transition. And then we, of course, always ruin it by commenting on how well we do.
I could, if I wanted to, I could make us seem really cool and just edit out us all of us commenting on it. But that's not going to happen. So
yeah, there's no way. We're too real for that. That's what we're calling it.
I already talked about horror a little bit in the intro, but I just love that this has a lot of horror moments in it. And the Force lightning, like that final scene, just really amazing and scary and shot in many ways like a horror film. J.J. Abrams has done some horror movies, including Cloverfield before, so I feel like he was kind of using a little bit of his horror chops here for
that. Also, horror and fear, and that's, you mentioned this earlier, but Luke's comment, I was wrong. It was fear that kept me here. And then, again, he's like, Rey, some things are stronger than fear. And because of how I was taking notes, my next comment was, Leia's lightsaber, which is, in fact, stronger than fear, because it is a symbol of love and strength and connection and all of those things. And yeah. Also, I'm sorry in advance for all of the times that you are going to have to edit out my chair, because I'm just like, today has been a day. So I'm a little bit more fidgety than usual.
Me too. I have diverticulitis, and I'm having a flare-up right now, and so I've been unable to sit in a comfortable position for longer than 10 minutes. So I keep adjusting myself too. It's a day, y'all, for y'all listening. It's been a day.
It is. Thanks for your patience. I do think this is an interesting way that the movie deals with grief and love, right? There's the meta way, which is they just pretend like Carrie Fisher is still alive for it. But also in the way that Leia dies, which you kind of mentioned, and is exaggerated in this version of the movie, but the intervention that she does to keep Ben from killing Rey, and then to help Rey realize what she's done and what she actually wants to do, and so giving her life to the Force and to both of them, which is a turning point in how they're both thinking about Palpatine and what comes next and all of that stuff. But and then we get the grief, right? I don't think Maz would say dear princess. I think she would say general or something else, but okay. That's also when they put forever princess at the end of the movie, and everybody in the there were people in the audience at different movies that saluted their general instead when that came on screen, because it's part yes, Princess Leia was a princess, and also when that is the thing that you are trying to get everybody to think and to remember, it takes away from all of the other work that she did that is not a royal inheritance, basically, which is not how it worked on her planet. But it was just I did also really love Chewie's grief at losing one of his favorite pets, and the real care and intentionality with which that was done, because I think it's so easy for Chewie to just be dehumanized, right? Like they call him it when they have him on board the ship. Like it's just so easy to dehumanize Chewie in universe and in the movies, and then to be able to see his clear grief so soon after he lost his other pet. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, so that, like, holding that part, and then also holding Ben / Kylo in the space of his mom has just given her life for the Force and for him specifically, and who is he, and his dad shows up, and who is dead and who is alive, and what does that even mean or look like, or
And it's interesting that when Han shows up, he is not a Force ghost because he's not blue. So is he a memory? Is he? It doesn't really say what's going on there.
I mean, it kind of like it kind of Han says that he's a memory, but yeah, it's weird. It's just a like, because we can.
Yep.
Kind of thing.
But I feel like that would have probably been with Carrie Fisher had she not passed away. So it's like, how can you have that moment without her? Let's put Han in there. So I feel like that was a necessity, which doesn't make sense. But what else could they do to give us that moment, you know?
Yeah. Agreed.
So I already mentioned the book I'm reading. The feature is disabled, but it has this excellent... First of all, it has an excellent thing about grief, so I would recommend reading it for that. But then it also has this excellent thing about talking about disabled people, and particularly how the life expectancy of many disabled people, because of the way our culture uses disabled people as expendable, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, and this book was written during the pandemic. And so there's a lot of discussion about ancestors and the disabled ancestors in the book, and it's really fascinating to read. But one of the things she says, one of the things the author says that they say is that when we die and become ancestors, then those who live beyond us are the ones who get to help us continue to grow and be held accountable and learn, because we're all not going to be like, all of us are getting it wrong. We're all human, and so in 50 years, who knows what people will look back on our podcast even and be like, oh my god, I can't believe they said that. But it's like, it's our descendants who will help us grow into that new future while we are ancestors. And so I love that kind of connection of ancestors can continue, they can help show the way, but they can also continue to learn and be held accountable and stuff like that for their harm too. And so the whole idea of like 1,000 generations living on in Rey, all the entire Jedi Order being alive in the person of Rey, is just kind of this that connection. It also makes
no pressure.
Right.
No pressure.
But it also, makes me think of Avatar, The Last Airbender, which has a similar kind of theme of like, he has he's a reincarnation of all these people who have come before and has all their power, and how hard that is for him initially to deal with that burden and responsibility. But then also when he's able to finally tap into that and commune with the ancestors, it really truly makes him stronger, as it happens with Rey in this as well. So.
Yeah. Agreed. I do think it's also interesting to think about ancestors and legacy, and specifically like thinking about, when Kylo tells Rey that she's a Palpatine, and then Palpatine like claims, I am the only family you have, and just those dynamics of like, what does it mean to be family, which we'll get into more in a minute, but also like, what is the burden of your own family legacy? Like, what responsibility does Rey have because of her ancestors, and what responsibility does she not have, and how do we navigate that? Because I think in this country in particular, there's such a huge confusion of guilt and shame that it doesn't let people have their full experience. Like,
Yeah.
you can't have like, in this country, we've made it so impossible to hold responsibility for the things our ancestors have done because it doesn't advantage white people, right? Like, but that's really, we need that. We need to be able to find ways to make the world better because our ancestors didn't. Because our ancestors caused harm. And I think there are so many different places where that comes up. Particularly thinking about colonialism, and we'll get into that a little bit later too, but like, there's just so much. And then the response, right? When Palpatine says, "I'm the only family you have," that's not true. Rey chooses her family. She chooses her family name. And she battles, very briefly, admittedly, but she battles her own self. She battles her own inner turmoil about all the things before she knows that she's like super full on, fully, definitely Palpatine. But ends up siding with chosen family, and like, that's who shows up when they're like, "It's not a navy, sir. It's just people." Like, people choosing to show up for themselves and for each other. Because the alternative is unbearable. Because that is the only hope. Yeah. And that's like, Rey, I need to go alone. Poe, yeah, alone with friends. Each time there's like, no, it's a chosen family thing. Which we thought, again, they learned, last movie.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And I like how Ziri says this line, and then Poe repeats it later, is they make you think you're alone, but there's more of us. And so just that all too real tactic that Empire does, even in this real world, of just dividing and conquering, to set people against each other, to prevent people from organizing together and rising up and things like that.
Yep. Yeah.
Also, just, we've been talking about throughout, but just this idea of you are what you make yourself to be. You're not dependent on where you come from. Like, you still have to account for some of the harm of where you've come from and stuff. But I feel like this is a very queer thing of saying, like, I can transform myself. I can co-create myself. I can make myself who I want to be. And how that plays out with Rey choosing to be a Skywalker instead of Palpatine's future for her, and Finn and his stormtrooper friend, who both were stormtroopers. Thank you, TZ, who both were children kidnapped and forced into being military, and then chose not to actually cause harm to others.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And it's Pride is the perfect time to be talking about this and thinking about this. Like, we just expanded our family. And I can't wait to do the Facebook announcement, because it's going to be ridiculous and cheesy and awesome, because it's going to be, we're growing our family kind of a thing. Because I'm weird and queer. Yeah. But it's that sort of stuff. The, like, what does it mean? Yeah.
I also found it interesting in here, getting into a little bit of the racism of the film, where I don't think this is intentional, but of course it is the two black people who have speaking roles in this film, who say who end up next to each other. Neither one knows where their other family is. They don't know where they come from. Also, just the reality that for many black Americans, because of slavery and the slave trade and stuff, there is this erasure of a past. And so how do you reclaim that past? And then it also gets into like the ways we intentionally erase past as a prelude to genocide is often a thing too, trying to erase people's history.
Yeah.
Thinking
And
that right now, especially with the stuff going on in Palestine and the genocide in Palestine.
And with the genocide too. Like, the continual erasure of the first book burning under Nazi Germany. That it was specifically the book burning at a place that was doing research and providing medical care for trans people. Yeah. But yeah, I guess I don't remember if this happened since the last time. I finished reading 100 Years War on Palestine on audiobook, and it really is so good, and to learn all of that history that I had no idea. Like, I knew a lot. I knew more than your average person because of who I am and, like, being a Lutheran pastor and the circles that I run in. And I knew hardly anything. So there's, like, highly recommend, but it is that, like, where do we erase people, erase things, and, like, Chewie is an it, right? We're erasing his personhood and his, like, validity as a sentient being. When they go to the festival that only happens once every however many years, and it's very clearly depicted as Indian culture, like the country of India, which has many cultures, but it's very clearly, like, Indian music, like that whole thing. And of course it has to be an alien race. It can't be a humanoid or a human species in another culture. Like, heaven forbid people of color be, people, humans. And then they come in and they, like, bring disaster to the place and then steal the local speeders and like, how much do they even realize the harm that they are causing? Or do they just justify it as trying to save them from something worse, right?
And their planet ends up getting destroyed anyway, so.
Yeah. I do love the way anti-droid bias is challenged in this. And I think it's so funny because in our 2 movie franchises, in one, droids are almost always evil, and in the other, droids are almost always the best characters. And so, like, it just goes in the like, it's just such a fun comparison, I think. And so, like, you get the conversation between Rey, BB-8, and Leia, where Rey's like, I will earn your brother's saber one day. And then BB-8 communicates some version of, I can do it for you. And Rey is like, no, you can't do it for me. And Leia's like, never underestimate a droid. And then Rey says, yes, master. And that's the first time she calls Leia master. But I love that. And then that line comes back, right, when BB-8 saves the day. Or even, like, then C-3PO asks if, when they fall through the sand thingies, asks if it's, like, the afterlife or heaven, and then is like, are droids even allowed? Right? But there's so much built around that, like, we know our answer as horror nerds at church. All droids go to heaven. But, yeah. And Rey's trauma-informed droid care, right? She encounters a droid who's very skittish, doesn't want to, like, no thank you, no thank you. She's like, okay. She recognizes that it's a trauma response, and she gives the droid space, and then later fixes the squeaky wheel. The droid, like, starts to figure things out, and is like, okay, yeah, I can actually trust you. Okay, yeah. So, yeah.
I guess we can get into our Force lore then, because there's a lot that happens new in this that we didn't necessarily see coming.
Yup. Light speed, jumping, skipping, hopping felt new to me, so
it is indeed new.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was really cool. It was really cool. Yeah. Like, to go and get all of those different scenes and stuff, and yeah. Also force healing.
Yep. And like I said, it's been mentioned before but never really shown. This is also how Rey was able to repair Luke's lightsaber according to the book. It doesn't explain how his lightsaber that was cracked in two and the kyber crystal cracked in two in the last movie, how she's able to use it again in this one. In the book it shows that she was able to heal the kyber crystal and repair the lightsaber. That's how she learns how to heal. And she learns how to heal from Leia, who is also talented in force healing, apparently.
Did not know. Okay. Also, she uses lightning.
Yep.
She's not too much force lore, but, like, it is interesting, like, I guess I wonder if a person being super powerful in the force on the light side, if they switch, I would think that they would have to start not what we've seen. Point zero, but like you like, do you lose some of the like light side stuff and then have to learn the dark side stuff? You're just like, if you're powerful on one side, you're powerful wherever you want to be.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it's shown up consistently in Star Wars. And so that's why the Jedi are so scared of falling to the dark side of the Force, because they know that because they're so trained, that they would be particularly harmful relatively easily.
Interesting.
I also love Rey's lightsaber stance, which is backhanded, which is similar to Ahsoka's. Ahsoka starts off with one, but then she quickly gets two lightsabers in Clone Wars. So. We also learned Finn is force sensitive in the book, at least, and it's strongly hinted at the movie when he's able to sense that Rey is still okay and stuff at the end.
Yeah, that's more suspicious for me, but yeah. At least I thought it was wishful thinking. I like the idea. It's true.
I mean, it's only the second black Jedi we've seen. If he eventually becomes a Jedi, so a black male Jedi in the Star Wars films.
Yeah, which is why I'm like, okay, don't be such a whatever. Yeah.
And it kind of goes back to the idea of the second film in its own way of anyone can be a potential Jedi. It just doesn't matter who you're related to.
So. Yeah, it is. It's a little bit weird. That's part of why I think it's weird, because we just watched Obi-Wan Kenobi and talked about Obi-Wan Kenobi, and they're being so intentional about tracking down any force-sensitive kid, that like a force-sensitive kid who's a stormtrooper.
Yeah, but this was after the collapse of the Empire. So Obi-Wan takes place like 40 years before this movie.
Oh, okay, I guess. Yeah. That makes sense.
There's also the dyad in the Force that Palpatine mentions just offhandedly here, but the book goes into more detail that in Force lore, the dyad in the Force was this kind of really strong, intense relationship between two different Force-sensitive people that enhance both of their abilities and like synchronize their abilities together in this really like unique way, and it just happens naturally through the Force. And so it's where the dyad in the Force is where the Sith rule of two and the Jedi master apprentice relationship is modeled off of this, because these dyads would appear naturally in Force sensitive people, and so then both the Sith Order and the Jedi Order kind of built on that to create their own Jedi master apprentice relationship and rule of two. And it makes sense to me too that Kylo and Rey would both be dyads, because they're both the results of genetic manipulation of midichlorians by Palpatine, because we know that Palpatine is who impregnated Shmi with the Force, and that's also Rey is, at least according to the book, but even in the film it's not clear, but somehow related to Palpatine, and Palpatine in the book had children through Force clone manipulation, not through actually having sex with somebody, and which I'm, again, happy for, because he is such a gross, disgusting human. I feel bad for any person that would have had to have had sex with that man.
Yeah. But then he, like, clones him. His clone does it, so... Yeah. Yeah.
And then also we get force teleportation, which was first hinted at in Star Wars Rebels when they are able to go through the space between space and teleport to different locations and times and stuff. Oh. And then we saw it hinted at again in Last Jedi, where like snow would appear on Kylo's face when he'd see Rey and she was in the snowy area and stuff like that. And so this one we see it like actually like them mastering this ability to Rey's able to pass the lightsaber through the force to Kylo from many yards away. So.
Interesting. Yeah, I was not thinking about it as force teleportation, but that makes sense. Yeah. Also, force ghosts can catch lightsabers and raise long buried ships and who knows what else. Which, like, we've seen, like, we saw Luke embody something physical in a different place from where he was, but that was before he became one with the Force. And so I don't think we've seen Force ghosts in a physical sense. Visual, yes, but not like a physical. Yeah.
I mean, we see the most I think we've seen so far is when Obi-Wan sits on a log. The Force ghost of Obi-Wan sits on a log, and that's like interacting with the world around him, but that's not like necessarily moving it or something. So
yeah.
Oh wait, we saw Yoda cause lightning in the last movie and destroy the Jedi Temple.
Yes, that I think is different though, right? Because it's not. There's something about like the Force doing that makes sense versus like you have to actually physically be grabbing the thing. Like, I could see a Force ghost doing the lightning thing, especially the way it was done, because it seems fairly natural, though we know that it's Yoda doing it. But, yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Well, that's it of the Star Wars movies. I'm so glad we made it through all fucking 9 of them. To be fair, like, I still love Star Wars, but it's been a long time to get through this
and it was
season.
more drawn out. Like, really, we've been on this season for a good year.
Yeah,
and you started reading a bunch and watching a bunch of stuff in January or February?
January of last year. But, like, May of 2023 is when we announced this season. And it's just now. We're not even finished with it yet because we still have one more Alien and then 3 retrospectives to do. So, but we're getting there. So, out of 10 kyber crystals, what would you rate this movie? And do you have a favorite kill?
I think I'm going to rate it 6.5 kyber crystals. Okay. I liked the camping. I like when I think about it as a camping movie. I liked the campiness. I like what you have said about the novelization. But unlike other times when I've done something and a half kyber crystals and it's just meant to be like almost another one, the half kyber crystal is definitely evil. It is. Yeah. It is an evil kyber crystal for all of the ways that it really fucked it up.
Yep. I would rate this probably. When I first watched it, I probably would have rated it like a 5. But like I said, I've grown a long way. I've grown. I'd say 6.5. I'd rate this, so kind of same as Emily. After reading the book, with the book version of events, I'd say 7.5. Because the book just really does make it that much better for me. Yeah. Like I said, it's fine. The book makes it good on its own. It's just, it's fine.
Yeah.
My favorite kill is when Pride kills Hux, because like Pride just right away knows, it's like, oh yeah, you're the fucking traitor. you're not as, especially after like how much of an asshole Hux has been the last two films, and the only reason he's betraying the First Order is because he wants to see Kylo fail because he's that much of like a ambitious asshole. So it's like, fuck you, dude. I'm glad you helped, but still, it's like, good riddance.
Yeah. I forgot that the guy's name was Pride, and so I thought you were talking about the death of Hux's pride.
Oh, that too.
Which also probably dies actually slightly before with the bandage. Because it looks so childish and so ridiculous. Yeah.
Did you have any jump scares?
Well, I gotta think if I'm...
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to think of who else died besides Leia, Ben, and Hux.
Palpatine, all of the Knights of Ren, the entire planet of Kelbo.
Yeah, I don't like any of those ones.
The Palpatine's army of people. General Pride dies when the ship explodes.
I guess I am gonna go for Hux's pride. The death of Hux's pride with that bandage.
Love it.
Yep. It just is so terrible. So terribly done. And like such an obvious lie. And then they made me go to show them to their ship. Yeah.
Yep.
I had 0 jump scares.
I think when I watch it in theaters, I might have had one. But I don't remember.
Yeah, I might have. I mean, I almost had one with the kiss.
Yeah. Well, come back, y'all, next week. We're going to be talking about the final Alien film. For now, we know Alien Romulus comes out in August, but for now, the final one is Alien Covenant. So we'll talk about that next week.
Yep. And then the week after that, we start our retrospective. So we'll do our Star Wars movie retrospective first.
Yeah.
We get to
I think we'll
do
also
a whole bunch of fun stuff, and including the character tracings.
Yep. That's going to be in the movies. And then we decided to do the book one a little bit later just because I'm tired.
Uh-huh.
So we're going to do it
Pride.
live, and you can find out more information about that later. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Because we also have our Star Wars Return of the Jedi from a certain point of view that goes with
I thought we already recorded that. It just needs to come out.
I don't think we've recorded it.
Pretty sure we did. But maybe we didn't. I don't know.
I don't know.
It's been that kind of season, folks.
Yep.
Well, that's it for our show. Our music was by Matt May. Come out seasonally on Thursdays. Please comment, rate, subscribe to us. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. YouTube. Support us on Patreon. Get access to exclusive movie commentary episodes, BooTube episodes, and more bonus content.
Merch discounts. I didn't know we got merch discounts. And I've ordered stuff from our merch store, which also our merch store is awesome and has plenty of Pride gear. It is never too late to buy more Pride stuff.
100%.
And we'll link to the merch store in the show notes.
Yep. And it's on our link tree as well. But anyway, go to patreon.com/horrornerds@church. It's only $5 to sign up, which is much cheaper than I imagine a Sith Wayfinder would be.
For sure. Or even the blade to find the Wayfinder.
Yep. Follow us on socials, Facebook and Insta at Horror Nerds at Church. Blue Sky, Twitter, HNACPOD for our latest updates about upcoming films, news, and other announcements. Until next time, I'm just looking at my friends one last time. Until my memory gets restored about 15 minutes later.